Okay, good morning, everybody. We will begin this second remote meeting of the Swansea Bay City Deal Joint Committee. I'll go to welcome and apologies first, and I'll start by introducing myself, and then we'll go around and Mr. Evans will call everybody in to introduce themselves so everybody knows who's on the call today. So firstly, Rob Stewart, Leader of Swansea Council and Chair of the Swansea Bay Joint Committee. Mr. Evans.
I'm Hugh Evans, Head of Democratic Services with Swansea Council. Councillor M&E Dole.
Diolch, M&E Dole, Leader of Command County Council.
Councillor Rob Jones.
Yeah, I'm Leader of Neath Talbot County Borough.
Councillor Dave Simpson.
Yeah, David Simpson, Pembrokeshire County Council Leader.
Professor Medwyn Hughes.
Hi, it's Ray Selby. I'm the Registrar for the University here representing my Vice-Chancellor. Good morning all.
Thank you. Give me a second. Jonathan Burns.
Jonathan Burns, Programme Director for Swansea Bay City Deal.
Greg Jones.
Greg Jones, City Deal Programme Management Office, Communications and Marketing.
Tracy Meredith.
Tracy Meredith, Joint Committee Monitoring Officer.
Chris Moore.
Chris Moore, Director of Corporate Services, Carmarthenshire, Section 151 Officer of the City Deal.
Nicola Pearce.
Nicola Pearce, Director of Environment and Regeneration, Neath Talbot Council.
Phil Roberts.
Phil Roberts, Chief Executive, Swansea Council.
Wendy Walters.
Wendy Walters, Chief Executive, Carmarthenshire County Council.
Have I missed anybody out?
Ian Wesley, Chief Executive, Pembrokeshire County Council.
Sorry, Ian.
Okay, welcome everybody. Mr. Evans, I believe we have a number of apologies as well.
Yeah, I have apologies from Maria Battle, Emma Woollett, Medwyn Hughes and Richard Arnold. And Steve Wilkes may be late joining us.
Okay, great. I'll move on then. Thank you all for that. I'll move on then to declarations of interest. Are there any declarations that anybody wants to make on any items on the agenda today? No? Okay. Thank you for that. We'll move to item 3 then, the minutes and matters arising. You've all seen a copy of the minutes. I've not had anything raised with me, but I'll give you the opportunity if you do want to raise any matters arising or any errors or corrections to the minutes. Okay. Is anybody in disagreement with the minutes? Okay, thank you. We'll take those as a true record then. Thank you. Announcements of the chair. I don't have any for today's meeting. Item 5 then, public questions. We haven't received any questions submitted by the public for this session. So we'll move then to award of funding conditions, item 6, and I'll call in Jonathan Barnes.
Thanks, Chair.
Burns, sorry.
That's fine. Hugh, it won't allow me to share my screen. So what I'll do, I'll go through my slides. It says only the chair of the meeting, but the slides are too big.
I can sort that. Give me a second, Jonathan. I'll give you power now.
Thank you.
Right. You can do it now.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Okay. So you should all be able to see my screen. Is that right?
Yep.
Great. Okay, so the award funding conditions, the report that you have in front of you effectively says that we've achieved all of the funding conditions that were stipulated in the letter that we received in October 2019. There were 11 targets that were set in there, and within one of those targets, the Actica review had 7 additional targets with that. So as far as we're concerned regionally, we have completed all of the things that were asked of us. They will be forwarded to Welsh Government. And then there will be a conversation happen to make sure that we are satisfactorily meeting all of those conditions. The 2 things that happened last week in Programme Board was updated business cases, in particular for Eregan and for the Swansea City and Waterfront Digital District. in addition to those specific project-related ones, there were things that I'll cover in the next few slides and agenda items around the implementation plan, the program business case, monitoring evaluation plan, etc. But effectively, they're all around the governance and the documentation around the governance associated with those. Okay. The last point I guess I would make on it is that we have to satisfy these terms and conditions, and by doing that, we will then be able to draw down further funds and the consideration for future project approvals. So, Chair, that's pretty much the update, and everybody has the report.
Okay, thank you for that, Jonathan. I'll open it up. Does anybody have any questions either on the report Jonathan's given us or the papers that you have before you?
Chair, can I, Ian Wesley here, can I just check with Jonathan that having satisfied those conditions, Jonathan, are we now waiting for an acceptance or an approval that those conditions have been satisfied?
Yeah, so this, once we've agreed these at joint committee, these will all be sent to Welsh Government. They're aware of the situation and the updates. We did that periodically every month. So it now has to go through a process in Welsh Government. But the only one that we're aware of that we will continue to have to evolve, all of these things will have to evolve anyway in terms of what we're doing on governance. But the current program business case I'll update in a few minutes. We will have to continue doing further work on that, and that will become a portfolio business case. So that is the only thing that we're aware of that we have to progress further.
Thank you.
Okay, you okay with that, Ian? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
Anybody else got any comments or questions? If not, who could you remind me, is this for acceptance or for noting?
This is for approvals. We need a quick vote on this.
Okay.
Chair.
So if everybody's happy, then we'll go to the vote on this. And who do you want to go through the roll call?
Just say if you're for, against, or abstaining. Councillor Rob Stewart.
For.
Councillor Emlyn Dole.
For.
Councillor Rob Jones.
For.
Councillor David Simpson. Councillor David Simpson. You're muted, Councillor Simpson.
For. Sorry.
That's unanimous.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you for that, Jonathan. Thank you, colleagues. On to item 7, then, the monitoring and evaluation plan. John, back to you.
Thank you. Sorry, let me just start. I've just restarted my slides. The monitoring and evaluation plan, this was part of the terms and conditions that we had to satisfy. So Welsh and UK government required us to update this as part of that external review. Regardless of the requirement from Welsh and UK government, this is good practice. This is what we should have, and it does align to the Treasury Green Book and all the stuff associated with the Green Book. So what the plan provides is effectively a framework. It manages and sets expectations for all project teams when they're undertaking the business case development. But then when it comes into a kind of delivery, it's project monitoring and the evaluation of those projects. So the whole point of it is to provide robust assurances relating to progress, performance, and impact of the entire program. Okay, so that's why we're doing it. In terms of how we're doing it, so all project leads were consulted on drafting of the plan that you have attached to the paperwork. The plan will apply both at the overarching program, which will become portfolio level, and at project level. Various things like milestones, outputs, outcomes, all of those different things associated with it will all be part of it, and they link to other documentation such as the program business case, which I'll go on to in a few minutes, and also the implementation plan. And I've just made reference to where those things are around the program benefits, the financials, and the milestones associated with what we'll monitor and evaluate. So the plan aligns to best practice, as I've already said, and there's a thing called a Magenta book, if those who weren't aware, and it also aligns to good practice around the Association of Project Managers, which is a national association. So what the approach also takes into account is who is responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. So there's a matrix that defines all of those different roles and responsibilities, so everybody knows what it is that they have to do and when in that document. The key activities include things like highlight reports, quarterly monitoring, annual performance reports, benefit realization plan, milestone evaluations. And that sounds overwhelming, but I've got a nice little diagram which will hopefully kind of put those into some perspective for you. So what are the advantages of doing it? Well, we want to make sure that we are coordinated and that we measure the success of the program and the projects, making sure that what we set out to do, the objectives, and what we set out to do in terms of what was critical in terms of success to us, that they're aligned, and determine whether the projects and programs have worked, because those will feed into other potential regional projects. Quality information is very important. We, as a joint committee and also program board, need to make decision making. This will help aid that and also provide visibility so that we can plan and we can deal with things like risk and issue management more effectively. So what we is public money, but some of it is, so we have to demonstrate value for money and make sure that the public and other key stakeholders have visibility of that. And again, it's coming back to the kind of rationale. If we create a culture of regional learning and sharing, this will improve not only for the city deal, but for other things around that as well. So in terms of the diagrams, all I've done is taken in the document, you can read all the words around these diagrams, where effectively what you've got on the left there is the program monitoring and project. So that's the kind of bread, and then the fill-in within that sandwich is the regional objectives that we have, the deliverables, and then alignment to national and regional strategies, policies, etc. And then at the bottom of that, then we look at performance and progress. So what do we put into it? What do we do with it? And what do we get out of it? And then what does that lead to? Are effectively performance of progress and benefits. And then on the right-hand side, it just elaborates on that a little bit further, where you've got the inputs, activity, outputs. They transfer across then from performance into benefits realization for outputs, outcomes, and impact. And that's a fairly standard approach to monitoring, evaluation, performance, and benefit. Only a couple of diagrams left. So what we will create in the PMO is a knowledge hub. Part of that knowledge hub will have monitoring evaluation. There'll be templates, guidance, training, various things to support all the projects. And we will start putting forward various reports, such as monthly highlight reports. That would include risks, issues, and activities. And you already have those in a different format. Then quarterly monitoring, which will have the monthly updates summarized, but in addition, outputs and financials associated with each project and portfolio. And then on an annual basis, have a performance report, which will effectively summarize what the portfolio is about, all the key milestones, the benefits realization that we've achieved, anything around governance, the status of the projects, good news case studies, and any financials associated with that. So those three elements are the project progress and performance, and then those feed into the benefits realization plan, which has various aspects to it, including profiles and reports, and then the milestone evaluations, such as stage gate reviews and lesson learned milestone reviews as well. So that, in a nutshell, that's effectively what that monitoring evaluation plan is about. And again, I'm not going to go into the detail of this, but this is a RACI matrix. So RACI, as I said before, it stands for Responsible, Accountable, Consulted, and Informed. And this basically talks about all the deliverables or tasks down the left-hand side, and then all the roles associated with a Swansea Bay City deal, and then who is going to be responsible for delivering a task or activity, who is accountable, who is consulted, and who is informed. So in terms of next steps for monitoring evaluation, we've had feedback from Programme Board. We would like progress from Joint Committee today, approval for that. Then we'll start populating the report templates, processes, guidance and training, working with Welsh Government to make sure that what we are monitoring and evaluating is what they are expecting as well. And then this will form part of what we have coming up next week, which is the external review that we have instigated between the 15th and 17th of July. So, Chair, that is pretty much the summary, a whistle-stop tour of the plan.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan, for that. We'll open it up. Any questions or comments for Jonathan on either the report or the slides that he's taken us through? Again, substantial amount of evidence there around the work that's being done to make sure that we have, as Jonathan said, robust guidance, governance to make sure our decision making is appropriate and the obviously the decisions we make are robust. So, okay, if not, we'll go to the vote. Hugh, if you want to go through the recall again.
Again, is 4 against or abstaining. Councillor Rob Stewart.
4.
Councillor Emlyn Dole.
Obliged. 4.
Councillor Rob Jones.
4.
Councillor David Simpson.
4.
Again, that's unanimous. All 4.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move then to item 8, which is the programme business case. Jonathan?
Again, I've got a few prepared slides to just run through the kind of where we've gone with this. So you probably all are aware we have a programme business case. That programme business case basically sets out the stall, what we are doing in terms of the Swansea Bay City deal. It was created some years back, and what we've done recently is consulted on it and updated it. So effectively, it has an executive summary. And following that, there are 5 cases. These align to the Green Book. So strategic, economic, commercial, financial and management cases are contained within that document. And then it has various contextual factors such as Brexit, COVID, regional priorities, the 9 projects, etc. So that's effectively what that business case is about. In terms of what we've done, so we said to Programme Board and to Joint Committee that we would obtain stakeholder feedback on the draft Programme business case, which we've done, present that to Programme Board, which we have also done on the 25th of June. Programme Board to recommend progression to Joint Committee. That's why it's here today. And then we will share this final draft or a draft with Welsh and UK Government for them to feedback on. And we've already started that process. So we are in the process of even further updates and making sure that we're answering and filling the blanks that they may identify. So the programme business case will also be part of the external review that is happening next week. So by doing what we did, we updated content from the original business case. I think it was 2017 it was last updated. There was various omitted information and things that weren't up to date. It is better aligned to the Green Book guidance. It's not fully aligned, but sometimes it's hard to write these business cases retrospectively, but we're doing as much as we can with that. And we're in the process of having workshops. We've already had 2 workshops and we've got a 3rd one next week with the Welsh Government Project Management Integrated Assurance Hub. And we will continue to evolve the business case, which will become a portfolio business case. And we've also had feedback from a variety of regional stakeholders to help improve that. So in terms of what are the key changes, because it's quite a lengthy document. So it will become a portfolio business case. It's reordered in terms of the order of the 5 cases in there. We've redrafted the strategic case, which includes oversight, alignment, governance, investment objectives, risks, dependencies, constraints. There's a new summary section within that. The economic case, there's better background provided for around the critical success factors. So when in 2016, we had a long list of projects, there was 19, that went down to 11, and now we're down to 9 projects. And it's making sure that that story is told as to how we got to those 9 projects. So we've got as much information as we have on those. Confirmed financial breakdown. So Richard Arnold and Chris have been doing really good work on making sure that the financial breakdown is up to date and the confirmed outputs. So we will do further amendments and to put it in simple terms, we will simplify, clarify and quantify things going forward within that, what will become portfolio business case. And what I want to do is just draw on a couple of aspects of it. A lot of the targets around GVA and jobs created, those are the 2 heads of terms that we have, and also leverage. But these 2 here, based around all of the 9 projects that we now have, the GVA, and these are estimates early on in the projects as to how much GVA will be generated from these and how many jobs will be created as a consequence of those 9 projects. So in summary, we have a 32% increase in GVA from the original estimate. So we're doing really well on that. And we have a 2.8% increase in jobs created from the original estimate. So overall, as a portfolio, we are effectively doing more than what we set out to do in the heads of terms. The forecasted spend, so this is a reduction. So in terms of city deal, public funding and private funding across the 15-year programme, and this is as of June 2020, we will be down by 10% on the overarching portfolio. And we have 5.3 million of city deal funding unallocated, which will help plug that gap. But the important point here is we're effectively doing more with less. It's a really good story to tell. But we are evolving business cases as we speak, and we know that there are additional things in there from both public and private, which will also help plug those gaps. But this is a watch and brief. These are estimates and forecasts at the moment. As we start going through the project maturity of each of the projects, so the 9 of them, we will start defining these in a more robust way as we go through that process. So this is a moving feast for both GVA, jobs created, and the forecasted spend. So what are the next steps? We're going to continue working alongside Welsh Government. We're going to better align it to Green Book. Most of the stuff around the Green Book gaps, if you like, what we have in our current business case is around how we monitor and evaluate and measure success. So that's effectively GVA, productivity, jobs created, and then anything associated with that. But again, by sectors or by projects, that's the kind of stuff that we need to get down at a project level and accumulate all those up to a portfolio. So subject to approval today, we will provide this again as part of the external review next week on the 15th to the 17th of July. And we will submit to Welsh Government for their approval in terms of the heads of terms, terms and conditions on the award. And Chair, that is it for that.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan, and thank you for the work that's gone in to achieve or to get us to this point. I think we're a lot further forward than we were. Again, as you say, there are still some things to be done in terms of absolutely aligning it. But I think we're in a very good place. And again, it's another demonstrable step forward in terms of making sure that Welsh and UK governments are clear, not just that we've met the obligations under the review, but how we've met them. So very, very pleased with that. So thank you to you and the team and everybody who's contributed to that. I'll open it up. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Jonathan on the business case? Okay, if not, we'll go back to you, Hugh, and if we do the roll call again.
Yeah, exactly the same way. So Councillor Rob Stewart.
4.
Councillor Emlyn Joel.
4, Rob.
Councillor Rob Jones.
4.
Councillor David Simpson.
4.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Hugh. Okay, item 9, implementation plan. John, back to you again.
Thanks, Chair. So again, a few slides prepared for this. So the implementation plan was part of the conditions on the award offer. So we've always had one. What it effectively does, it sets out the activities to support the delivery of the city deal for our region. It's a live document. Joint committee approved it in February this year as a version 24. This is version 25 in effect. What the project does, what the implementation plan does is set out all the things around project outcomes, benefits, the tasks, timelines, and interdependencies between the projects. So that is what you have as an update. This is a requirement, as I said, to the Welsh and UK government conditions on the award. And we will continue to keep on evolving and adapting this as things unfold for the portfolio. And we're working closely with the project leads to make sure that all information is fed into this implementation plan. So in terms of what's happened, so we've now got change control. So on the document that you would have in your pack, There is now a summary as to what the difference is between this version and the previous one, so that people don't have to sift through a massive document to figure those things out. So effectively, we've revised the project and joint committee milestones. We're taking account of COVID-19 impact assessments in terms of the delivery of business case developments. There's an updated project list and a table of those. So we now have 9 projects in our portfolio. Financial forecasts are up to date. They are as of 31st of March 2020, and they're in that document. The fact that we've appointed a senior responsible owner, and that's Wendy Walters, and that we have a monitoring evaluation plan, and that summary is now in the implementation plan. So it's signposted and people can go and look at the document. And then the last one is an reference to the program external review. So I've mentioned that on virtually every agenda item I've had, but next week, 15th to the 17th, this is led by Wendy as the SRO. We have an external team coming in who will look at our program, and they will review it, but not review it as in an audit. They will review it as in a forward-looking perspective on it, to look at what we've done and what we are planning to do. So it's meant to be a supportive thing. Neath Port Talbot have recently gone through 2 on their perspective, and I think they found it very helpful. So I hope that we will find that the same in the programme. I believe there's 23 stakeholders across the region and the Welsh and UK government who will be have conversations, and those will range from leaders, chief execs, the PMO with me, the supporting office in Welsh Government, key stakeholders with universities, health boards, etc. So there's 23 people will have conversations, and recommendations will come out of that with a report based on what their findings were. So all the documentation that we've been working on, all the governance arrangements, my appointment as an example of that, all of those will be part of those conversations. So what's next? So Programme Board have progressed it to Joint Committee. Hopefully that will be approved today. We can submit that to Welsh and UK Government as part of the conditions on the award. And we will continue to work on this and make sure that things are continued to be progressed and updated. But this is part of that target update to make sure that we can secure further funding and also project approval moving forward. And chair that one.
Okay, thanks again, John, and for the updates to the, I think, as you said, it's version 25 now of the implementation plan. Any questions or comments for John in terms of the update on the implementation plan? Okay, no. We'll go then back to who for the vote?
Yes, so Councillor Rob Stewart.
For.
Councillor Emlyn Dole.
For or blank.
Councillor Rob Jones.
For.
Councillor David Simpson.
For.
Again, that's unanimous, Chair.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you all. On then to Joint Committee revised budget. Chris Moore. Chris.
Thank you, Chair. This budget is brought before you now as an update on what we set in place last year. You will recall last July we set a 5-year budget, and we agreed at that point in time we'd have a rolling budget. As a consequence of that, we have moved forward, and we've now implemented a project management office structure, and obviously had a revised position. So this now sets the budget rolling for a 5-year period. The first year, which is effectively the year we're in at the moment, it will be for fixed, and then the soft budget for the next 4 years that will be updated through the period. There was an update that was given to Programme Board in January, but due to the COVID crisis, obviously Joint Committee didn't meet, and hence why this is only now getting to Joint Committee. The structure of the budget in the main is each year is actually supported by an income flow of the partners' contribution, which is the 8 partners at 50,000 per annum, and the top slicing of the 241 million city deal money at 1.5%. Due to the timeline of where we are at the moment, obviously we're currently in year 3 of the partners' contribution, so that runs for a further 2 years after this year at 400,000 per annum. And we haven't utilised any of the top slicing of the City Deal money yet, so that is starting to be used this year. So effectively, you've got a roll-in income for the next 3 years of 1.1 million towards the expenditure that is structured in the budget. The revised project management office structure has been accommodated with the posts that are not currently in post commencing. The assumption is the 1st of August, but obviously that will move and this will be monitored through the year. Obviously, there are risks with the budget, and that's why we're setting soft budgets for years 2 to 5, because we are reliant upon the top slicing, the 1.5%. We are reliant upon the constituent authorities being able to manage the funding, because the funding from City Deal is capital funding, whereas this is revenue funding, and support of the constituent authorities is key within that, so that we can actually manage that to fund it. And obviously projects are still going through the process of approval, and we haven't had approval on the 11 projects, so that is all subject to development over the period of time, as you would expect. Appendix A summarises the overall position over the 5 years. You can see over the 5-year period, if you take the figures as stand at the moment, that in terms of ins and outs in each year, there is a shortfall of 108,000 on the 5 years. But that is actually balanced against the fact that we got a rolling balance coming forward from last year of 272. So it's effectively manageable, but this is what we'll have to monitor year on year, depending how the expenditure is incurred. And any under or overspends during the year that actually net against the income levels will be carried forward and managed within the budget. All costs are now included, and reference to the support costs that are given by the individual authorities are all costed within the budget. So there is total funding for everything that we incur on the project within the funding envelope that is actually set. Hopefully the report is quite clear in terms of some of the assumptions that used and the structure of how it's been put together. But Chair, I'll happily take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Chris, for that comprehensive run through. Any questions to Chris on the programme revised budget? Okay. No, Hugh, if we go to you then for roll call again.
Yeah. Councillor Rob Stewart.
4.
Councillor Emlyn Dole.
4, Obaid.
Councillor Rob Jones.
4.
Councillor David Simpson.
4.
That's unanimous again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move then to the COVID-19 impact report. Obviously, all of us have been dealing with both the onset of COVID and the reactions to it, and I know leader colleagues are on a call this morning to talk about further reopenings. So it is very much of the time. Our City Deal projects are not immune for that, so it is important that we take the opportunity to look at how COVID may impact our projects as they emerge. So I'll go over to John. John.
Thanks, Chair. Again, I've got a few slides to help navigate through this. So before I go into the slides, I wanted to make some important points. And one thing is that when you do impact assessments or risk assessments or anything associated with that, this is standard project and programme management practice. We provided honest appraisals to support the success of our projects. No project requires any escalation to joint committee, so this is more for information at this point. All risks identified are currently being managed and mitigated and cause no major concern for the PMO, me as the director of that PMO. So that said, I'll go into some detail around the process. So you can see my slides just to make sure. Yeah. Okay. So The purpose is to assess the potential impact, and it's specifically around COVID-19, both the crisis and the recovery period. So this isn't a broader risk assessment of a project. And it's for all City Deal projects, so all 9 of them have completed this. City Deal will support and stimulate national, regional economic recovery and growth. So this is really important that we make sure that we identify, manage and mitigate risks. One of the things that we had feedback on, which was very helpful, is that it will also provide opportunities. So the next iteration, the next round of the kind of COVID impact assessments will also look at what opportunities we have as a consequence of it. So as I said, it also complements what we currently have in place in terms of risk assessments and the documentation on governance. So all projects identifying the risks and mitigations are initially managed by the project teams. Anything that is of significance, and that could be project scope, the outputs, timescales, commitment from key stakeholders or anchor companies, they should be appropriately escalated through the regional PMO, program board, joint committee, etc., through our governance structure. So all project managers were asked to complete a template. They were given guidance, and they provided that. It was mainly through May, but slipping into June. And we've now summarised the overview of those assessments. So all risks which were identified were assessed as high, medium or low, and they were all assessed against 8 impact criteria. So the impact criteria were scope and the key objectives as one, targets, timescales, reputation if project fails to deliver, stakeholder partnership commitment, project costs, procurement and staff resourcing. So those are the 8 impact criteria. We can add to those if anybody wants to add any further criteria, but those are the ones through consultation that we identified. So basically, corrective action was identified for each of those risks based on mitigation requirements and how quickly we could recover in terms of the recovery time objective. So impact scores were then provided against each of those impact criteria and then allocated a level of what we call facilitation. So those 4 categories there, the lowest scoring one is basically no support required, no facilitation, continue to monitor at the project level. And then moving up through those categories, no intervention required, so continue to monitor locally with support from the regional PMO. And then category B was we would facilitate as a PMO and support the regional program office with the project team to go through a conversation about those risks. And then the kind of highest category then is category A, where joint committee commission the task and finish group to conduct an in-depth review on. Okay, so those are the scorings. In terms of occurrences of red risks, and again, it's a very important note to make here. These are risks, they're not current, they are potential. And having identifying risks, there are probably over 100 in the full list. In fact, it is probably more now than 100. These are the ones that are identified as the higher impact and higher likelihood, but they are not in current, so they're not issues, they are risks. So to kind of cover off the kind of main concerns, they were around achievement of targets, reputational effect, and the impact on scope and objectives. These aren't any dissimilar probably to all the risk assessments that they do on a normal case for all these projects. And the secondary concerns then were around stakeholder and partnership commitments. So those are the areas that were identified. And then you may not see this on the screen, but it's in the report if you want to refer to it in that. But basically, against all the assessment criteria going down the left with its scoring, and it defines what each of those scorings are. Each project, so you've got PDM, Oregon, etc., going across the 9 projects, they all give an estimate of where they feel each of those assessment criteria fall within a kind of significance. And then at the bottom, you can see the categories. They're red to green. So most of them are in category C, where there is no facilitation required. Continue to monitor at a regional program office. And then B, the only one that came up was a B, and that is facilitation required. And that is for the regional program office to work with a project team and have a session to do that. And that was waterfront. So we had that meeting with the waterfront project team, It was a very good meeting. Through the conversations, what was happening is that this was specifically about COVID impact as opposed to the broader risks. So that scoring was lowered from 80 down to 60. So that facilitated session drew out those things. There were other risks in there which were more macro level risks, which the project couldn't do anything about anyway. So those were taken out because they're not appropriate at a project level to deal with them. So all risks identified for waterfront, they have been mitigated appropriately. The project is on track to deliver all expected outputs, and we'll do this in a little bit later, but the progress has been made on the construction phase, and to date, that is all happening as planned. Engagements with the contractors, the anchor companies, adhering to social distancing requirements, material shortages, demand for office space, all of those things are being dealt with. So conversations have happened, evidence is being sought, all those things. For example, recent market interest in the digital village on the Kingsway has been very good. So that would indicate this is still on track and all those sort of things. So all those things are being managed and dealt with. The facilitated discussion, as I said, lowered it from 80 down to 60. It still keeps it in the category B, but that's is probably a testament of where that project is. You know, it is in delivery. By nature, it will have clearer risks associated with that because of the timing and the phase of project. So what we're going to do, so as a PMO, we're going to continue to work with all projects and make sure that the risks and the impacts of those risks are up to date, and that anything associated with mitigations and the opportunities that I said at the start, that they're fed into this process as well. So, Chair, I think that's the end of that. Okay.
Okay, thank you, John. Thank you, John. And as you say, I think the big differentiator here is that the waterfront project is an actual live delivery during COVID, which is why the guys are obviously highlighting and working so hard in terms of the live risks that are there. I know the guys have done a great piece of work already, and I know we're getting significant interest from major tenants for the delivery of the Kingsway 71-72 Kingsway scheme, but also obviously we're about to launch the second phase of the waterfront project, which will see the phase 2 and the creation of the public sector hub there, which is again significant uplift, and again I think that will help improve the overall program business case as well in terms of these additional benefits that will bring. So I think a very good piece of work, because we do have to take account of how the world will change post-COVID and some temporary impacts that we might see as we come out of the restrictive period we're in. And it's quite right that we identify those and map them out. So again, thank you for the work that your team have done with the guys on the ground. Very happy to open it up for questions and comments to John. Anybody have any? Okay, thank you for that, John. Okay, who will go to the vote again?
Yeah, Councillor Rob Stewart.
For.
Councillor Emlyn Dole.
For, Rob Hyde.
Councillor Rob Jones.
For.
Councillor David Simpson.
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Okay, thank you all very much. That's carried. Then we'll move then to item 12, joint scrutiny terms of reference changes. Tracy?
Thank you, Chair. Committee may recall that in October of last year, the Joint Committee considered correspondence from the Joint Scrutiny Committee as to 3 matters. Firstly, a reduction in the quorum number from 8 to 6. Secondly, rewriting the indemnity clause in the JCA. Thirdly, removing the caveat requiring joint scrutiny to seek the permission of the Constituent Authority Scrutiny Committee before looking at individual as opposed to regional projects. In relation to the last 2 matters, Joint Committee was not minded to change the JCA, but in relation to the quorum number, it was resolved by the committee that myself revert to my colleague monitoring officers and heads of legal and other authorities as to whether the amendment could be done by delegated authority. The reason for that, you may recall, being that the committee didn't want to interfere with the amended JCA process, which was then awaiting approval from both the UK and Welsh Government, and they didn't want to lengthen that process at that time. Since that time, discussions have taken place with monitoring officers and heads of legal, and all authorities, save for Carmarthenshire Council, are able to make the amendment to the quorum number for the Joint Scrutiny Committee using delegated powers. Carmarthenshire Council will need to take it through their formal decision-making process. I have included, with sign-off by the other heads of legal monitoring officers, and the amendment at 1.5 of the report, which sets out the new paragraph 7.1 in the schedule. That contains the same caveat that you have in the joint committee terms and conditions as to voting, i.e. that you cannot vote or consider a matter unless a member of the authority involved in whatever they are scrutinising is present. So the amendment to clause 7 of schedule 7.1 is set out there at page 197, I think it is, at paragraph 1.5. So you'll see the recommendations on page 196 to amend the terms of reference as set out in the report and to authorise legal officers to enter into any agreement necessary to effect the changes. As I said, 3 authorities can do that using their delegated powers, but Carmarthenshire will need to take that through their formal decision-making process.
Okay. Thank you for that, Tracy. Does anybody have any questions, comments for Tracy in terms of the proposed new scrutiny arrangements? Okay, all happy, then we'll go back to Hugh for the roll call.
Councillor Rob Stewart.
4.
Councillor Emlyn Dole.
4, O'Blyde.
Councillor Rob Jones.
4.
Councillor David Simpson.
4.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. We got the final item then, which is the project updates. I'm mindful that we have to close the meeting at 11:30 for our meeting with ministers. So I'll go to John for the headlines in terms of the project updates, and then I'll quickly come to local authorities for any or partners for any updates they want to give. But we've got about 6 or 7 minutes left. So John.
It'll be as quick as I can go. So 9 projects. First one is digital infrastructure. So the project has been discussed at the Economic Strategy Board and at Programme Board in June and July. Policy workshop between Welsh and UK government was held on the 2nd of July. So everything's on track for business case development and submission to the PMO by the summer. So we're looking at around August. Then it has to go through the process of regional scrutiny and approval within that period. So there's 3 themes: underserved communities, connected places, and next generation wireless, all supported by embedding the trunk road ambition across all 3 themes. And the trunk road is basically not a physical road, it's the pipeline, as in internet pipeline down the M4 corridor. Okay, so that's digital. Skills, the project has also gone to ESB in June, and the PMO are working with the project lead to establish a timeline to submit that business case to regional governance as soon as we can. We want to try and, particularly around COVID and the response, talking about opportunities, we want to try and get that in as quickly as we can. The life sciences wellbeing development with Carmarthenshire, updated business case has been submitted to the PMO. My team fed back and provided an in-depth analysis of that to Chris Moore as the SRO and to the project manager, Sharon Burholt. The business case is being discussed today with ESB. That's the test and challenge, and then will be considered for Programme Board and Joint Committee post any regional tweaks in August or September. Oregon, the business case has been updated. That was one of the targets in the award funding letter conditions. Phase 1 is at 100% occupancy, or close to 100% occupancy, and planning work is now progressing for phase 2 of the development. But the update for the business case was well received in Programme Board last week. Swansea City Centre and Waterfront Digital District, the business case was also updated. Again, that was in the award funding conditions. The digital square and arena is now at full business case. So in other words, it's been procured. That is planned to be completed in October next year. Steelwork is complete for the indoor arena, and they're now in the process of trying to attract technology businesses to that area. Construction contractor tender for the digital village has been issued. So in other words, planning consent is in place, and that went on the 26th of June. Planning submission for the Box Village and Innovation Precinct is anticipated for September this year. The Life Sciences Wellbeing Campuses project. So a strategy has been strengthened and now includes sports and sports science. That's an emerging priority that came through along with the health and wellbeing aspect of it. Keith Lloyd, who is the SRO, presented to Programme Board on the 25th of June, and I was part of a facilitated options appraisal on the 3rd of July to go into the shortlisting into the preferred delivery choice for that project. So the anticipated date of submission for that to the PMO is late July, early August this year. Homes as power stations. So the project has been approved by all 4 regional councils. The project has been approved by joint committee. That was on the 11th of June in the last meeting. External stage gate review has been carried out. That was about 2 weeks ago. And a recommendation report has been finalised. And those recommendations are already in process of being updated and the business case being tweaked. The support and innovation low carbon growth, sort of similar situation. Project's been approved regionally by joint committee. The external stage gate review also was carried out on that. So Nicola has been nose to the grindstone on the last few weeks around external stage gate reviews. That also has a recommendation report, which has been finalised, and it has been shared with stakeholders. And the business case is being amended based on those recommendations, particularly around the steel science part of that business case. I think I'm on the last one. So Pembroke Dock Marine, the project's been approved, as we all know. So that's happened. So extensive local, regional and Wales media coverage has happened. It's all been extremely positive, which is nice to hear and see. And we're now working with the project team to make sure that how and what we do for next steps and implementation, that gets put into a kind of project plan, and that we communicate that to all stakeholders, including the governments, to make sure that they see the progress being made on that live project. And Chair, that is pretty much an update for every project.
Thank you, John. And I think this is the counterbalance to the heavy stuff that we've been doing on governance, because again, I don't think there is any other deal in Wales that has such a progressed and a mature pipeline of projects. Because again, whilst we've had 3 approved, we've got another few to hit the minister's desk very shortly, and the aim is obviously to get all of them to the ministers before the end of the year. So again, if you look across Wales, I can't see another deal that has this maturity in terms of the delivery of the projects to make that impact on the economy. I'm sure when we meet ministers in a few minutes, we will be pressing them in terms of making sure that when those projects hit, that they get the approvals they require, and that the money that's available to us is released as quickly as possible. I've made the point, and I will continue to make the point very clearly, that as we come out of COVID, it will be exceptionally important that projects like this that have taken many years in some instances to bring together are approved, so that they can help us get that economic stimulus out there to help our communities come out of COVID. And I think that's something that's been well received by Welsh Government, and I just want to see the action follow. So I'm sure we'll have that conversation with ministers shortly. Are there any urgent items that anybody wants to update in terms of the projects that John has taken us through? Is there anything anybody wants to add quickly before we end? If not, can I thank you all very much for your attendance, and you'll know that we're not meeting in August due to our usual break, but we'll see you all again in September. Thank you all very much.
Yeah, thank you.